Imagine realizing one day that a huge part of your frustration in life was never about intelligence. It was about something far stranger, something far more uncomfortable. Think about the last time you argued with someone who was obviously wrong, not slightly wrong, not debatable, completely wrong. You explained calmly, you presented evidence, you used logic, you even tried to be patient, but instead of reconsidering their position, something strange happened. They became even more confident. Their voice became louder, their arguments became more emotional, and suddenly you found yourself in a bizarre situation. The more rational you became, the more irrational they became, until eventually the conversation collapsed into something chaotic. Misunderstandings, frustration, stubborn denial. And afterward, you walked away thinking something that millions of intelligent people have quietly wondered throughout history. How can someone be so certain and so wrong at the same time? That question has haunted philosophers, psychologists, and thinkers for centuries, because it reveals something deeply unsettling about human nature. Most people believe intelligence wins arguments. Most people believe truth eventually defeats falsehood. But real life tells a very different story. In reality, confidence often defeats intelligence, volume defeats nuance, and stubborn certainty defeats careful reasoning. The more you observe human behavior, the more you begin to notice this strange pattern everywhere. At work, on social media, at family gatherings, in politics. People defending ideas they barely understand with absolute certainty. People rejecting facts simply because those facts threaten their beliefs. And the more clearly you explain something, the more aggressively they resist it. Eventually, you begin to suspect something deeply unsettling. Maybe the problem isn't intelligence. Maybe the problem is something deeper inside the human mind, something that blocks reason entirely, something that turns conversations into emotional battlegrounds. Centuries ago, the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer observed something brutally honest about human nature. He noticed that many people never enter an argument searching for truth. They enter searching for victory. This small difference changes everything, because when someone is searching for truth, they listen, they reflect, they question themselves, they allow their beliefs to evolve. But when someone is searching for victory, logic becomes a weapon, facts become threats, and truth becomes irrelevant. The goal is no longer understanding, the goal becomes winning. This is why arguments with foolish people feel so exhausting. You think you're having a discussion, but the other person thinks they're fighting a war. And in war, the objective is not truth, the objective is domination. Once you understand this, many confusing experiences suddenly make sense. You remember conversations where logic failed completely, moments where evidence was ignored, situations where the most confident person in the room understood the least. But to understand why this happens, we must look deeper into human psychology. Because stupidity is rarely just a lack of intelligence, it is something much more complicated. Most beliefs are not just ideas floating inside the mind, they are deeply connected to identity. They become part of how people see themselves, their values, their culture, their social group, their pride. When someone challenges a belief that is tied to identity, the mind does not experience it as an intellectual disagreement. It experiences it as a personal attack. And when identity is threatened, the brain activates powerful defense mechanisms. Instead of examining the argument objectively, the mind searches for ways to protect the ego. This insight was echoed by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He suggested something deeply uncomfortable. Human beings do not primarily seek truth, they seek certainty. Truth is often complex, truth is uncomfortable. Truth forces people to admit mistakes and reconsider long-held beliefs. Certainty, on the other hand, feels safe. Certainty creates stability. Certainty protects the ego from embarrassment. This is why people cling to flawed beliefs with incredible determination, not because the beliefs are logical, but because abandoning them would require something emotionally painful, admitting they were wrong. For many people, those 3 words feel unbearable. So the mind does something remarkable. It protects itself, not by searching for truth, but by rejecting anything that threatens the ego. Another strange aspect of human behavior appears when you examine the relationship between knowledge and confidence. You might expect knowledgeable people to be the most confident, but often the opposite is true. People who know very little about a topic often speak with absolute certainty. Meanwhile, experts, those who have studied a subject deeply, tend to speak more cautiously. They express nuance, they acknowledge uncertainty. Why? Because knowledge reveals complexity. The more you learn about something, the more you realize how much there is left to understand. Ignorance creates the illusion of simplicity. When someone understands very little about a topic, everything appears obvious. Problems appear easy, solutions appear simple, reality appears black and white. This psychological pattern fascinated the psychoanalyst Carl Jung. Jung believed that people often project their own insecurity outward. Instead of admitting uncertainty, they display exaggerated confidence. Confidence becomes a mask, a shield protecting the ego from embarrassment. And unfortunately, human psychology contains another twist. Human beings instinctively associate confidence with competence. So the loudest voices often dominate conversations, even when they understand the least. This creates a strange social dynamic. Foolish people speak loudly and confidently. Thoughtful people speak carefully. They hesitate. They consider nuance. They recognize complexity. And because of this, intelligent individuals often withdraw from debates entirely, not because they lack ideas, but because they recognize something deeply frustrating. Arguing with foolish people rarely leads to anywhere. The same misunderstandings repeat endlessly. Facts are ignored, evidence is dismissed, logic becomes irrelevant. Eventually, the intelligent person becomes tired. They realize that no amount of reasoning will change the other person's mind, and so they fall silent. But this silence creates a subtle danger. When thoughtful voices withdraw from conversations, foolish voices dominate the space. Ideas spread not because they are correct, but because they are loud. The writer Aldous Huxley warned about this long ago. He believed societies rarely collapse through sudden catastrophe. More often, they decline slowly through intellectual laziness. When people stop questioning ideas, manipulation becomes easy. When simple slogans replace thoughtful discussion, truth becomes fragile. This is why dealing with foolish people is not just a personal challenge, it is a philosophical one. And this is where Schopenhauer offered a brutally honest insight. He believed arguing with foolish people is often a mistake, not because truth doesn't matter, but because your peace matters too. A foolish person loses nothing in an argument, but an intelligent person loses something extremely valuable: time, energy, peace of mind. And these are resources you cannot easily recover. Once you understand this, a surprising realization appears. Foolishness is not an exception in human society, it is part of the human condition. Human beings are emotional creatures. They are guided by instincts, fears, and social pressures that often overpower logic. Expecting universal rationality will only lead to frustration. But accepting this truth brings a strange freedom. You stop expecting every conversation to be logical. You stop feeling shocked when irrational ideas appear. Instead, you focus on something far more important: protecting your own clarity.
You continue thinking carefully in a careless world. You continue seeking truth even when it is unpopular. And by doing so, you preserve something incredibly rare: independent thought. So the next time you encounter someone loudly defending an absurd idea, pause, observe, ask yourself a simple question: is this argument worth your energy? Or is the wiser path simply to walk away? Because sometimes the greatest victory over stupidity is refusing to fight it at all. And the moment you understand that lesson, you stop wasting your intelligence on pointless battles and start using it to build a wiser life.